Hi everyone, Stepan here. It's Tuesday, so we are going to continue the story on Petrosian. Before I get into the game, I'd like to apologize for two things. Firstly, the mistakes I've made in my previous videos. I make tactical mistakes because I prepare my videos without the engine, and then also sometimes I'm going to go into lines that I hadn't prepared beforehand. So sometimes I'm going to make stupid mistakes because I'm not really able to think while I talk. And secondly, I'm sorry about the ads that have been running in the middle of videos. That's apparently a new update or something which I wasn't aware of, so I think I disabled it now. It should be okay. Okay, so we are going to look at the first game from Petrosian's first Georgian Championship. It was in 1944. He was 15 years old. I couldn't find his full score during the championship. What I do know is that Vladas Mikenas won the championship, but he was a very strong player. There's a variation in the Karo Khan named after him, maybe some other variations as well. And it was a very short and a very sweet game, very instructive positionally, incredibly instructive in terms of development and quality of pieces, and a strategic battle that was completely one-sided. Now, talking of short Petrov wins, I'll just like to show you one Anand game where he lost in 7 moves. I hope you know that. I mean, it's really instructive, so I'm going to show that as well. So e4, e5 was played. Anand was black. He actually lost in 7 moves. So knight f3, knight f6. Oh, excuse me. Knight f6, knight takes e5, d6. Knight to f3, knight takes e4, knight to c3, and in this position, this is the Nersesov attack. Black takes on c3, white recaptures with the d-pawn, tries to castle queenside with bishop e3, queen d2, castles queenside and attack. Usually it's going to be equal though, but knight takes c3 is basically the only move. I mean, you could go back to f6 or to c5, that doesn't lose, but it's just not considered to be good. Anand played bishop f5, and this has been played once before. And I don't remember who played the game, but he didn't win. In this game, Anand's opponent simply won. Queen e2. And now after d5, which is the only way to defend the piece, you play d3 and Anand resigned with black. So that's, sorry for the digression. Let's go back to the Petrosian game. So he's 15 years old, plays e4. He has the white pieces, e5 by black, and we have a Petrov. So after knight f6, we have again knight takes e5, d6, knight to f3, and in this position, black captures on e4 again, and Petrosian doesn't play knight c3, the Nersesov attack. He plays queen e2, the Cozio attack. And now there is only one move that makes sense, playing queen to e7. That's absolutely forced. Knight f6 is illegal, d5 loses the knight, similar to the Anand game, to d3. f5 also loses the knight to d3. Bishop f5 loses in exactly the same way to d3. That would have been the Anand position without the knight on c3. So queen to e7. And now this variation has a very drawish reputation because the queens are inevitably going to get traded off. Both sides could sort of delay the exchange of queens if they wish to, but since both queens are pinned to the kings, I think it's almost inevitable. So white here has 2 moves. He could play d3, forcing a trade straight away, or he could play knight to c3, which is, I think, better if you want to play for the win. So after knight c3, black of course takes, and exchanges the queens and pretends that he has a slight edge. After knight takes c3, also white could capture the queen first, and after bishop e7, then take the knight. Any case, it should be very close to equal. Okay, in this game, Petrosian played the move d3. The knight could go to c5. That's not considered as good because it's not protecting your king, and it could be harassed with b4. So knight f6, and here Petrosian declines the queen trade for a move. The thing is, whoever captures first develops their opponent's bishop, so this is sort of a waiting game. So bishop g5 by Petrosian, obviously threatening bishop takes f6 and ruining the pawn structure. So if black, for example, plays knight c6, then bishop takes f6 and you have to take with the pawn because your queen is pinned. So after bishop g5, there was a way to decline a queen trade though. You could play knight bd7, which maybe is unappealing because you block in your bishop, and in this position white should hold a slight edge because it's not clear where this bishop is going to develop. Usually after knight to c3, in many variations, white will want to play knight b5 or knight d5. Knight b5, to be more precise, is a very common move in the Cozio attack. And black will want to follow that up with c6 or prevent that with c6. So playing b6, bishop b7 is sort of, well, in collision with that plan, because then knight b5 would be much stronger. But you could do that. So after bishop g5, black simply exchanges, so queen e2, bishop e2. And now Petrosian won the battle of bishop development, sort of. It doesn't really mean much, but as you can see, the position is perfectly symmetrical, except for the fact that white is a tempo up. He developed his bishop to g5. Now that's very important. White plays knight c3, and now because he got his way with the bishop trade, with this annoying move bishop g5, black has to waste another move, and white is going up and up and up in his development advantage. So black doesn't have to play c6. It's not forced, but it's the best move. And we are still in like mainline theory. This has been played 2000 times. So c6 played to prevent knight b5. If black just castles or develops a piece, then white would castle, and now again c6 should be played. If, for example, knight c6 or knight bd7, then knight to b5, this very annoying maneuver with the knight, where black cannot really play the move bishop to d8 because I'm going to take on f6, and you are forced to take with the pawn. If you take with the bishop, I take on c7. So you have to play knight e8, which is kind of awkward, and now takes, knight takes. And it's obvious that black's pieces are undeveloped. They're all on the back rank except for the e7 knight, so that wouldn't be good. It would take some time to develop the pieces. So after knight c3, black simply plays c6. And now if we count the pieces developed, it's 4 against 2, which is a huge difference, especially considering the fact that white is just about to castle queenside. He can use the open e file for his rook. And since black will have a hard time connecting his rooks, especially without putting the knight on a stupid square or blocking in his bishop, often there will be tactical problems on the e file. So white castles queenside, black castles kingside. Now this is the second most popular move. By far the most popular is just quick development, while white didn't occupy the e file yet. So black continues with knight a6, and using the fact that white hasn't played d4 yet, so bishop a6 is not an option. White continues with rook h to e1, and now you already have to be careful. Knight c7 is the best move, just trying to put something on e6 and prevent losing on the e file. Knight e4, this is a very common trade, so knight e4, d4, bishop g5, knight g5, and here again white should hold a slight edge, better rooks, better king, better bishop, better pawn structure, but in the end like 90% of games in this main line of the Cozio attack end in a draw. Instead of that, black castles, and you could argue that getting his king to safety is more important than developing his pieces, but what happened in the game sort of, well, disproved that. Petrosian continues normally with rook h3-1, and now here is a critical position. So black obviously doesn't want to play knight a6 because that's a passive move, although that may be one of the best options. Obviously he doesn't want to play knight d7 because his knight would be blocking in his bishop, but then he would have to spend even more time developing his pieces. Playing a move like h6 is okay, that's a normal move, bishop h4, but now again you need to find the plan. And there are a couple of normal moves here. I would like to invite you to pause the video and create a plan for black. Now this position is by no means lost, it's equal. White maybe has a slight edge, but you have the opportunity to mess up badly here. So try to find a development plan, not just one move, just try to decide where your pieces go. Okay, so rook e8 is a very normal move because you have the option to play bishop f8 later on after h6 g5, for example. It defends your bishop, and for example knight e4 and knight e4 and e4 and bishop g5 and knight g5. You're contesting the e file. You can play moves like knight a6, knight c7. You can play knight d7, knight f6. You could also continue with b6, bishop b7, and then play for c5, d5. There are a couple of options here, and none of them are really terrible. You could also continue with f6 probably, but you don't want to weaken the diagonal too soon. Okay, so rook e8 was normal. What I think is the best move is simply d5. D5 is a very strong move in the Petrov, and often white is going to respond to d5 with the move d4. Now, you could harass the bishop for a while with h3, making it sort of unable to move. On e6 doesn't make much sense, d7 doesn't make much sense, f5 we're going to have a look at in a second in another variation. That's not a good move for a very specific reason. And here, for example, knight bd7, d4. Now, black is importantly controlling the e4 square. You're not really going to lose on the e file because the bishop barely is able to move. Now, with bishop d3, you can play rook e8. So d5 would have been a very good option. Also, knight bd7 is just a very sensible move. What happened in the game gave black so many problems that this is move 11 for black. In 5 moves, black resigned. So how could black resign in 5 moves from a completely equal position? He didn't blunder a piece, he didn't do anything that bad, he just didn't develop his pieces. He played the move bishop f5, which is a very tempting move, because you want to play knight bd7 like a normal person without your bishop being on c8, and then you play rook e8, rook d8, d5, great. So if white waits, for example, king b1, then knight bd7, fine, you gain a tempo on the bishop drops back to g6. I mean, what's the problem here? It's fine, this position is okay. Because the knights defend each other and everything is protected. However, after bishop f5, white can strike straight away, and here you have to play energetically. Of course, Petrosian plays knight d4. Now, there are 2 options here. You can keep the bishop on the diagonal, or you can retreat it to g6. Now, keeping the bishop on the h3 c8 diagonal is sort of admitting defeat, admitting that you made a mistake. So obviously bishop d7 wouldn't make too much sense. Bishop c8 would be a clear loss of tempo. Bishop e6, you just take it. However, that's better than what happened in the game. So against, for example, bishop e6, because that's the most sensible of the moves, you can take and simply play bishop g4. Black is forced to play either knight takes g4 or e5. If he plays knight takes g4, which seems better, then after bishop e7, he could take on f2, fine. So for example, rook takes f2. But after bishop takes d6 and rook takes g2 and rook takes e6, my h2 pawn is defended. The material situation is equal, but you still didn't develop. So if you try, for example, knight d7, I could play rook e7, force your knight back straight away. I could play knight e4 for knight f5. I could play rook d2 e1, and it just seems very pleasant. Okay, instead of that, black played an even worse move. And this move is bad strategically, it's also bad tactically. He played bishop g6, which again is a very human, tempting move, saying, okay, my bishop is on g6, it's good, your knight is not good, doesn't have any squares, doesn't have f5, doesn't have b5, if it retreats to f3, so what? Well, there's a problem. And there's a beautiful problem for black here. I wonder if you could find white's next move. So try to pause the video and try to continue this position for white. Again, if you don't seize the moment, then bishop f5, bishop g6 is great. It's sort of like not punishing bishop f5 for black in the semi-Slav or Slav. Just don't punish it, and then black has his bishop outside of the pawn chain. Okay, so the way to punish this is beautiful. Bishop g4. And now, well, what do? Bishop g4 is a very strong move, not because you are attacking this diagonal, although that could be important, as we are going to see, but you are attacking the e7 bishop. Okay, if the rook defends, for example, then you can just take, ruin the pawn structure because the rook is pinned on e8. So for example, rook e8, bishop f6, gf6 would be forced, and then white stands slightly better. And again, you don't have a square for your knight because d7 is still defended. If you play c5, which I was looking at as one of the strongest moves probably, which is just a tempo, then I take on e7. You don't take on d4, you take on g4 with the knight, and now knight d to b5, attacking d6, and knight c6 is probably best if you don't develop for another move. If you, for example, play knight to f2, then I don't even have to react to that. I could take on d6, I could play knight c7, I could play rook f1 first, just forcing your knight to move back to g4, and now I could play knight c7, winning an exchange. So if you take on h2, I could probably just play rook to f4 to trap your knight, along with all the other issues you have. So here you probably have to play knight c6, and now I just take. Oh, I don't take. My rook is hanging. Huh, okay. Okay, so I did it again. I don't know what to do here. Okay, we will check this with an engine so that I don't make mistakes. So I'll just go through it once. Takes, here. And what is this position like? I'm afraid I'm not trapping your knight. I'm afraid I'm worse. So I'm going to have to check that with an engine. Okay, I'll check that with an engine. Okay. After bishop g4, so c5 seems strong. I didn't analyze all the lines, but it seemed strong. Still, I don't think it works. The other option was to take on g4, and we sort of have the similar attack on f2 and h2. But now bishop takes c7, attacks the rook, attacks d6. So you play rook e8, saving your rook. And I play f3. That's very important, so that you don't have knight f2. If you play knight f2, you lose the knight. So you have to go to e5, and then I take on d6. So I don't think knight takes g4 works. c5 seems more interesting. In the game, bishop d8 was played, which undevelops another piece. And now, pause the video, find the most beautiful move in the game. I mean, when I saw this move, I just thought, okay, it's unfair to be this strong at 15. So, pause the video, find the move. Okay, Petrosian played bishop c8. This is a remarkable idea. It's just a beautiful move. So firstly, it's preventing rook e8, which black would like to play. If rook e8, then rook takes e8, knight takes e8, and bishop takes d8 wins a piece, and it would just be game over. What else can you do? If you play knight a6, I can take on b7. If you play knight d7, I take it. If you move your knight somewhere, I again take on b7. So in the game, bishop to b6 was played, counter-attacking on d4, and Petrosian simply took. So bishop takes b7, bishop takes d4, bishop takes a8, and here his opponent resigned. I mean, it's a pawn and an exchange. So, and unless you move your knight, you're not developing. And unless you move your knight, you're not attacking my bishop. If you move your knight, you lose c6. If you move the c6 pawn, then I just retreat. So it's all over. Okay, now let me set up the evaluation bar. Okay, that should work. Now let's go through the game with the engine. So we don't have to go through the theoretical moves. This is still theory. Queen takes e2, all theory. The only sort of non-theoretical move is castles. Knight a6 is theory, but it's still okay. Rook h1. And now this is the critical point. So bishop f5 was played, which is just a bad move. d5 is best, and d5 perfectly equal. Plus 0.3 really is nothing. I guess rook e8 works as well. Yeah, plus 0.3, 0.4, knight bd7 should also be okay, plus 0.5. h6 is just a temporary move, so then, again, the position is fine. Bishop f5 played in the game, and now we can see that the evaluation is already jumping to +1 and more. The engine also likes knight d4, but yeah, knight d4 is just crushing. And now, okay, the engine actually wants to go back to d7. Maybe that makes most sense. And now white again initiates trades. So if it takes on e4, then I take on e7 and you lose a pawn. Okay, so that wouldn't work. So for example, rook e8, and now I can just exchange and ruin your pawn structure. So getting the bishop back to d7 wouldn't be good. Okay, bishop g6 played. And now, okay, bishop g4. Now let's have a look at this c5 idea. So knight g4, we concluded that you lose the d6 pawn in the end. Knight a6 I didn't consider. I didn't think this was a possibility. Ah, okay, f3 first to chase the knight away, and now I can take on b7 probably. Yeah, now just take on b7. Okay, so knight a6 seems to be an option, but it's not a good option. Okay, after c5, rook takes c7 is correct, knight takes g4 is correct, knight d to b5 is correct, and now let's analyze this knight f2 where I messed up and I didn't know what to do. So after knight f2, okay, rook f1 was correct, knight g4 has to be the move. Yeah, okay, knight g4, and now not knight c7. Wait, what happens to knight c7? Yeah, knight c7 it's equal because, wait, he doesn't take. Ah, okay, no, I'm stupid. Okay, after knight takes h2, I just play rook h1 and win the rook. Okay, so sorry, I missed that. And after knight c6, this is similar to the problem I had in the game. So I take your rook, you take my rook, I take your bishop, you take my knight. And again, it doesn't seem too clear. So after bishop g4, c5 seems to be very strong. How is this +3 and the other position came down to equal? So knight takes g4, knight d to b5, and we were looking at knight f2. And the engine doesn't like it now, but after rook f1, knight g4. Yes, okay, we played knight c7. Knight c7 is not good. Yes, bishop f4 seems very strong. And now I'm attacking 2 pawns and I'm threatening knight c7. Okay, so I need to be a bit more careful and just defend h2 and then go for the same variation. Okay, and after bishop d8, yeah, bishop c8 is just a beautiful move. After bishop c8, it's only +2, which is very hard to believe. a6 best move. Okay, a6 actually makes sense. You give up a couple of pawns, but you get to save your exchange. So this is just crushing. Also, the engine wants to play knight e4, attacking the bishop on g5, but I guess I just take on d8, and once you take either on c3. Ah, knight c5 is nice, defending b7 and attacking both bishops. So I could take on b7, and you take, and I move my bishop back here, taking your pawn, and now I'm going to be 2 pawns up again. Okay, but bishop b6 played in the game, and after bishop b7, bishop d4, bishop a8, black was right to resign. It's +3.6. I mean, a very short game, but I think very instructive, and I think being able to understand the importance of development is one of the biggest things you can learn when you are starting out in chess, and for me that was huge. So ever since I started looking at games like this, I'm very afraid to be down in development, so I'll do anything I can to be up in development, and I won't go as far as to give up material, but very close. Okay, let me know what you think about the game. Sorry about the ads and the mistakes again. Hopefully that won't happen again. See you tomorrow. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.